Joining us now from Dallas, attorney Matt Yarbrough is a former assistant U.S. attorney who specialized in cyber crime. Imagination, or have computer hackers or cyber criminals actually received relatively minor punishments over the last few years? I mean, have we tended to treat this as though it was a lesser form of crime? And to what extent do you think that may be behind the fact that we're going to see an escalation here?
Well, absolutely. The history has been that hackers tend to get off pretty lightly with just a slap on the hand. But I think that's going to change, and the Melissa case is going to be a good example of that. That case is still coming for sentencing. The losses in that case were $80 million in damage. The losses today are going to dwarf that. So I think, as you see in the future, more and more courts, and that means if we can find out who it is, and we can get our hands on them, and we can get them into the courtroom, are going to receive more heavier penalties. But the big problem getting there is realizing that this is a hard thing to stop. And when it does happen, and you do get the actual bad guy in the courtroom, you're going to have to tally up those damages. And that's going to be very hard, finding the victims and getting them to come forward and prove up those damages.
Well, and even if you do, if you're talking about damages in the tens of millions, possibly even the hundreds of millions, if you're dealing with an individual, that individual isn't going to be able to compensate, isn't going to be able to reimburse.
Well, exactly. There are not a whole lot of 15-year-old kids that can pay major corporations the damages they've had. Just look at the case that happened with Mafia Boy, the hacker who committed the denial of service attacks on CNN. And in this case, I think we're in the new economy. If you doubted that yesterday, you woke up this morning and you found that you were, if you used your email system. And essentially, I think more and more judges are going to see in the federal district courts around the country, or even in the state courts, are going to start handing down heavy penalties, because this is a stoppage of our economy. One of the interesting things about this particular virus today is it actually has a component of it, a Trojan horse. It would call up a website and allow a program to be downloaded to capture the person who's infected, their password, and it could transmit that password to another site. Meaning, essentially, someone could collect information and walk right back to the front door of any individual user system or a corporate system.
You made passing reference a few minutes ago to something I want you to expand on a little bit, and that is the notion that it's not even as simple as finding out who did it. Depending on which country that person is in, you may not even be able to lay hands on him.
Oh, well, exactly. I mean, again, it's too early to think that this is a young kid that did this. I mean, it could be state-sponsored, foreign state-sponsored. It could be corporate espionage. But depending on who the individual is that did it, it's going to be hard to get your hands on them if they're in a foreign country, mainly because a lot of the extradition laws don't apply to this sort of crime. And even if they did, the other government has to agree to hand that individual over. As we've seen in other cases, the most we can hope for is that the government, where the individual resides, will actually do something. And that's the problem with the internet. We're in a global economy now. Anybody can reach out and touch your corporate system, you at your house, or any of our municipal or government structures and networks.
Who was the hacker behind Melissa, and what's happened to him or her thus far?
Well, David Smith was I think he was 31 years old, and actually, is my understanding that he wrote a much better script than the one that was used today. And in finding him, he made the one mistake that most hackers make, is he left around digital fingerprints. And in this case, it was an obvious one. He actually left his name inside the source code of the Melissa virus.
He's an American?
Yes, he's actually from the state of New Jersey.
He was doing it from here. Steve Trelling, Harris Miller, Matt Yarbrough, very good of you all to come in. Thanks for your expertise. A word about our Friday night special when we come back.